Hello viewers from wherever you're watching us from around the world. You're watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we're broadcasting from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. My name is Aliou Cisse, and it's now time for your weekly State of Affairs program. Well, if you have been following developments around the world, you will recall last month, that's December, at the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C., the U.S. President Joe Biden announced the selection of the Gambia, of course, including Togo, Senegal, and Mauritania, by the U.S. government's Millennium Challenge Corporation Board of Directors to develop new MCC grant programs. Well, established in 2004, the agency has been a steadfast partner with the governments across the African continent, investing $9.5 billion in 24 African countries. With the new selection in last year, well, the MCC has expanded its active programs to 14 countries in Africa, with compact and threshold programs worth $3 billion, as well as another $2.5 billion in the pipeline. Well, in view of this, I'm joined on the program this week by Her Excellency, the Sharon L. Cromer, who is the Ambassador of the United States of America to the Gambia. Ma, welcome to the State of Affairs program.
Thank you very much.
And of course, she's not alone. She is joined by her visiting Managing Director of the Millennium Challenge Corporation for Africa, Jason Small. Mr. Small, welcome to the State of Affairs program.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you so much once again for joining us on the State of Affairs program. I'll just start with Your Excellency, the Ambassador. I mean, when this announcement was made, I mean, there was so much jubilation among Gambians that the U.S. government once again is coming on to support the country's development agenda. What more can you tell us about this development, and how did you receive this news?
Thank you, Aliou Cisse, for the opportunity to be on State of Affairs. I think this is my first time. Yeah. I appreciate it. Before we start, can I say on behalf of the people of the United States and the staff at the U.S. Embassy how deeply saddened we are at the passing of His Excellency, the Vice President, Badara Aliou Diouf. He was a great man. I had an opportunity to meet him, speak with him at length, and I knew him to be a scholar, an educator, a statesman, and he will be missed. So to answer your question, I was elated to hear of President Biden's announcement at the U.S. Africa Summit that the Gambia would be among 4 African countries selected to develop a compact, an MCC compact. This is a huge milestone for the Gambia. The Gambia is just 6.5 years from an authoritarian rule, and yet it has made significant progress in building its democracy, promoting rule of law, opening up freedom of speech in the media, to really demonstrate to the MCC that it can develop a compact and actually succeed in implementing it along with the MCC. So I was ecstatic about this recognition, and I am absolutely sure that the Gambia will develop a strong compact that addresses the major constraints to economic growth, and which will help reduce poverty here in the Gambia.
Like I said at the beginning, I mean, the Gambia and the U.S., they have set a long-standing bilateral ties. I mean, U.S. has been there for the Gambia. I mean, how does this new development, you think, is going to impact on the Banjul-Washington relations?
First of all, it's a demonstration that our partnership is growing, deepening. The MCC is very careful in selecting partners for compacts. The Gambia just 2 years ago started developing an MCC threshold program that focuses on improving access to reliable energy. And now it's eligible for a compact that will identify, as I said, the constraints, the major constraints to economic growth, equitable economic growth, and poverty reduction, and devise a set of projects that will help address those constraints. So this builds on, as you were saying, many projects that we're doing here in the Gambia. First, we are, through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, we're addressing food insecurity through a food for education program that will touch on more than 50,000 students, providing nutritious meals so they can learn and concentrate in schools and improve literacy. We have USAID coming back to the Gambia, working on judicial reform. State Department is working through the International Republican Institute on building the capacity of the National Assembly. We have the U.S. Treasury Department providing technical assistance to the Ministry of Finance to manage the debt and possibly work on budget support. We have many programs, and we're very proud that these programs are expanding.
And like you said, there are several programs that the U.S. government is supporting the Gambia. I mean, where does your mission, the embassy, foresee the relationship between the Gambia and the U.S. hopefully in the next 5 years or 10 years?
I see the relationship deepening even further. Our vision is to create a strong trading partner in the Gambia. And to do that, you have to build a solid economic base. To do that, you have to have strong democratic institutions that can deliver services to its people. So we hope to, in the next 5 years, help to do that. But most importantly, we hope to encourage the private sector to invest in this country, because the public sector can't do everything. And it's the private sector that's going to help create jobs and grow the economy and broaden the tax base so that those taxes can be used to build the institutions that deliver services to its people.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for actually coming to our studio and, of course, sharing some of your thoughts as far as this whole important program is concerned. I know we will now engage the main man himself, that's the managing director of the MCC, Jason Small, who is, of course, responsible for Africa. Once again, thank you so much for coming on the program. And, Your Excellency, good to have you on the program.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you very much.
Once again, we'll just let you go, and then while we continue with the managing director of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, Jason Small, who is in the country. His visit comes barely a month after, like I said, the U.S. President Joe Biden announced the Gambia, Senegal, Togo, and Mauritania as, of course, countries selected, to benefit from the MCC program. Mr. Jason, once again, good to have you on the program. To start with, could you just take us through, as to what is this MCC all about?
Sure. No, thank you, Eliu, for having me here on the program with you. It's my pleasure to be here in the Gambia. My first visit here, although I have been actively involved across the African continent for more than 20 years, and it's really just my honor to be here and to be invited today to be with you. The Millennium Challenge Corporation is a great question. We often get asked, what's the origin of this independent U.S. government agency? And if you remember, back at the turn of the Millennium Development Goals were a priority and are a priority for the international community in thinking about development. And the U.S. government at that time decided to create a new tool within the U.S. government to help advance the Millennium Development Goals. And therefore, the Millennium Challenge Corporation was created. Our mission is to reduce poverty, but through economic growth. And that is where we have been focusing for nearly 20 years now. The idea behind MCC is that development thrives in an environment where there are a commitment to certain principles. So a commitment to democracy and democratic rights, a commitment to investing in people, and a commitment to inclusive economic growth. And so what we do as an agency each year is we look at countries across the board who are countries that are in need of development and who are showing us year by year that they are committed to those principles and demonstrating those principles, and we can select them for these time-limited grants, which we call compact programs. So we're very excited that we're able to kick off a compact program which is for the people of the Gambia. That's really what we're here. That's what we're designing. It is a process to go through to design a program that can provide these grants where they'll make the most difference in the country in reducing poverty and economic growth. And it builds on the Threshold program, which Gambia was already selected on in 2017, that's focused on policy reform in the energy sector. But now we're looking more broadly. We know there are lots of development needs here in the Gambia, and so a compact program gives us that opportunity to do so much more.
I mean, I just want to know, I mean, in this case, do you have countries coming up with requests, or is it just the MCC that looks at countries that they feel needs to benefit from this program? Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we have another key principle that underpins the work that we do. It's country ownership. This is not about what MCC wants in the Gambia. This is what the people of the Gambia want and need. And so we will be embarking on a process that works closely, of course, with the government of the Gambia, but also with other stakeholders, down to the village level, to the ward level, to the district level, provincial level, all the way to stakeholders in the private sector, in civil society. We want to hear voices from all those sectors to help inform the decisions that we and the government take together about what this program can and should do. So that's a key principle for us as we move forward in thinking about where we will invest. You talk about the Gambia benefiting from the threshold in 2017, and now this is a broader or bigger package for the Gambia. I mean, give us the specifics. What's the difference between the threshold and this compact? Sure. In terms of the package, I mean, right. How much are we looking at here? Correct. Yeah, no. The Threshold program is a $25 million program. It's been agreed to and signed by MCC and the government of Gambia. In fact, the government and MCC have already agreed on the conditions so that we can begin implementing that program. So we're in the process now. There's work that's going on with the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum, looking at ways to improve the institution, particularly NAWEC, and looking at ways to help lower the cost of energy, reduce outages, the things that the people and private sector need in order to have economic growth. And so that program is already well advanced and moving forward. But now we have this new opportunity, as I said, to again look at what are the constraints to growth? What's holding back real job creation, real economic growth in this country? What are the opportunities that with resources like what MCC brings to the table, we can make a real difference in the lives of people? I will say our average compact size is $370 million. That's across all of our compacts historically. That's not necessarily the amount that will be decided upon for the Gambia when we get there, but it's because it's based on the quality of the program that we developed together and the quality of the projects, as well as the funds that the U.S. taxpayer make available to MCC through Congress, because we receive our funding from the American taxpayer. So there's a lot of opportunity and hope here, and we look forward to working on that. I mean, you talk about, the areas that the compact we looked at. You talk about reducing poverty and economic growth. I mean, what specific areas will you look at as far as trying to address the issue of poverty and of course economic growth, which is a problem not only in the Gambia but across many African countries?
So this would probably be a good opportunity for me to share a little bit about the work we're doing elsewhere on the continent, either currently or in the past. So for example, we have done a number of energy compacts in West Africa. We've got some that are currently in progress, such as in Senegal. We have a fairly large program there, your neighbor. We also have done work in Ghana and Benin and Liberia. We're working on an energy program in Sierra Leone. And usually we tend to focus on the areas that the private sector, areas where complement private sector investment, because we want our money to go further. We want it to catalyze private sector investment. So a lot of times that has to do with investments in public goods. For example, transmission and distribution infrastructure is usually a big need that we are finding in many countries. And in addition to that, institutional and policy reform, particularly at the utility level, so that we're lowering the cost of energy for the consumer, and so that the utility can meet its costs, and in some cases turn around and be a contributor to the economy rather than a drain on the economy. So that's just one example. We also are looking at transport is a big area we looked at. We have done some investments in ports like the Port of Cotonou in Benin. We've done the Port of Praia in Cabo Verde, helping to modernize those ports, because it's such, for those countries, as I believe your port is here, an essential link to the international community and your imports and exports that are vital for economic growth. So looking at that, we're also working on roads in Cote d'Ivoire, right around the port here. It's a very congested port. So by improving the roads and making it, digitizing the port operations. So these are some of the examples. So we don't know yet what we will do here in the Gambia. We're going to look at all of those things, but with a compact, we can really think about both the policy and institutional side as well as infrastructure.
And talking about the threshold and the compact, I mean, does the compact supersede the threshold, or they're both running concurrently?
Yeah, they'll both run concurrently. Okay. So the threshold is already very far advanced in its work. It has objectives that have already been clearly laid out. Funding has already been allocated, and so we definitely will. That program will continue, and it's important that that the government of the Gambia and other stakeholders recognize that that's a priority. That the country must still implement that threshold program while we're working on developing this next program.
So basically, the Gambia can continue to benefit from the threshold program.
Yes.
While they also benefit from the compact.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Now let's put that aside. I mean, someone out there might be asking. I mean, the Gambia is one of the smallest countries in the world with less than 3 million people. I mean, U.S. I mean, world power. I mean, what is the interest there? What is the interest? Why do you have that interest in the Gambia?
Like
why is the Gambia so much important to the U.S.? Because when you look at the U.S. foreign policy and all those stuff. So.
As I said before, the Millennium Challenge Corporation was created in order to help countries that are committed to those underlying principles of good governance, countering corruption, investing in its people, pursuing private-led growth. Countries that need development assistance and are committed to those principles are the best partners for MCC. And so no matter whether you're large or small, in terms of population, it's that commitment that matters. And we look across the globe for countries that meet those criteria every single year. And our board of directors, which is chaired by the Secretary of State, is part of that process of deciding which countries. And so, we've had partnerships with other small countries. I mentioned Cabo Verde, Lesotho in Southern Africa, also of similar size. We've seen great opportunity in both of those countries. We've had successful investments in both of those countries, and I believe we can here as well.
Earlier on, you talk about the threshold. I mean, the Gambia benefited in terms of trying to improve the energy sector. When you look back, do you think that purpose or that vision has been achieved as far as the energy sector is concerned?
The threshold program is really right in implementation at this moment. So we do monitor and evaluate the progress of all of our programs, and we hold ourselves to very strict criteria for the success of those programs. I think it's a little premature at this moment to comment on the threshold program.
But it is ongoing.
Because it's ongoing, yes. It still has a few years to complete, fully complete implementation. But we hope to see the benefits of that program, in the coming years, and then the compact program will build on that, whether it's in the energy sector or another sector. I don't know yet, but I know that we will definitely build on the successes that have been made in the threshold program.
You talk about monitoring. I mean, in this case, is it a joint monitoring exercise, or is just the U.S. government, or should I say the MCC, that independently monitors the progress of this program, or is the benefiting country, the government, that monitors the progress? How do you go about the monitoring aspect of it? Because it is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we build in monitoring from the very beginning. We have a monitoring and evaluation component of all of our programs that actually extends even beyond the end of the program, because we want to see the success of the program, where we've challenged, where we haven't been successful, so we can build that into learning for the future work that we do. But it is a joint effort between MCC and the government of the Gambia, the government of the country that we are working in. We have a very, I think, innovative implementation model, which is where we will use international best practices for procurements and procurement guidelines. That's how we build accountability into the program, so that we make sure that the funds go to pay for their performance of the contractors and the work that they're doing. So it's been a very successful model, and MCC has built a reputation across all the countries where we work and with our country partners that we can deliver the results that we set out to deliver.
And like you said, it's an independent body under the U.S. government.
Yes.
Financed by taxpayers, of course, of the United States. Any worries in terms of, the impact of COVID-19? Certainly, it has, impacted many countries as far as the economy is concerned. In terms of your budgeting, the financing, the sustainability of this program, any concern?
Yeah, COVID-19, of course, has affected the whole world. And we've seen not just, of course, the health impacts, but the economic impacts. We've seen rising inflation. No country has been insulated from the impacts of COVID-19. And certainly, as we look at the programs that we've designed, we are in some cases having to relook at those budgets. Do we have the resources now to be able to complete the projects that we had originally planned prior to COVID-19? In some cases, we're able to work with governments to find financing that can help meet those gaps. But I think if there's anything, the need for an MCC-like investment in countries is now more urgent than ever. And the development opportunities are more available than ever. And so for us, it energizes us that we can use this important tool that we've been given and supported by the U.S. Congress and supported by the Biden administration to be able to do this kind of work in places where it's most needed.
And certainly someone watching this program will be asking, U.S. is coming in to invest a huge amount of money on the development of this country. Is this a pro bono grant, or there are some, of course, should I say, some strings attached to this support?
So as we develop this compact program, the government must maintain its eligibility for the compact. So what does that mean? So first, it means that we must pay attention to the scorecard. The MCC scorecard comes out every November, and it tracks the government's progress against indicators in the three areas I mentioned, in good governance, economic freedom, and investing in people. And every December, our board reviews that scorecard, and will continue to select countries to continue working on compact programs. So that's number one, is that commitment, and so that's what needs to be a focus throughout the compact program. Second, it's really key that as we work together, that we design the conditions together that we see as essential to the implementation of the program, but also the sustainability of the program. And so in a lot of cases, we together will identify changes in law, changes in regulations, changes in policy that are needed to create the environment where the compact program will succeed. And we will enshrine these in the compact agreement, which is an international treaty, and that we will commit to provide funding and to do the things that we're willing to do, and the government makes its commitment on its side. But it's a mutually agreed conditions that are designed to reinforce the success of the program. And so we've seen a lot of success in that across the programs that we've done across the continent. So to answer your question, yes, but they are meant for the success of the program.
You talk about the scorecard that you use to determine what country or which country benefits from the threshold program or the compact program.
Yeah.
I want to know, I mean, how do you establish these facts to ensure that what you said a particular country is actually what is on the ground as far as the scorecard is concerned?
Sure. So the data that supports the scorecard comes from independent third-party institutions. None of the data is collected by MCC. Okay. So Freedom House, UNESCO, it states right on our scorecard exactly the institution that provides the data. So our job each year is to take the data and to put it into a format that allows us to see how is each country doing relative to each other. So a lot of people ask questions about our control of corruption indicator. Passing the control of corruption indicator does not say there is no corruption in that country. It just means that the institutional data that we have been provided says that that particular country is doing better than its peers. And so it's a relative scorecard. So that's why it's important. Countries continue to focus on it. But that's what allows us the confidence to be able to say this government is committed and is demonstrating each year that it cares about these principles and is and it's an objective measure. That it's available. All these scorecards are available on our website. You can look up the Gambia, you can look up your neighbor, you can look up other countries as well. So it's very transparent.
And in collecting this data, I mean, you talk about Freedom House, talk about UNESCO. I mean, what do they look out for, or how do they go about collecting this information? Do they engage the citizenry, or they just contact government agencies?
I mean, it varies from institution to institution on how the method that they use to collect data. We usually tell our partners, and we're always happy to connect them with those institutions if they have questions about why a certain score is looking a certain way, or if there's some data point that is not available. Sometimes there's lags in the data, those kinds of things. So it's really not MCC's. We're not collecting the data. We're relying on those institutions which have their own histories and reputations of having done this work.
Like you said at the beginning, this is an independent agency, yeah. But how do you collaborate with other U.S. bodies, I mean, the government? How do you collaborate, even though you are independent,
right.
But how do you collaborate with them? Because at some point there will be that conflict of interest.
Right. No, I mean, of course, we are, a member of, for example, the U.S. Embassy here. We collaborate with our partners from the interagency through the U.S. Embassy, and Ambassador Cromer, who you spoke with earlier in this program, has been a great supporter of our work here and in advancing the overall relationship with the country that helps facilitate our work. We will, of course, coordinate with other development agencies, both inside and outside the U.S. government. So USAID, the U.S. Development Finance Corporation, for example, other actors that are doing similar types of work. We complement each other. We share information about what we're doing, and we look for ways that we can reinforce. We also work very closely with agencies outside of the U.S. government, like the World Bank, like the European Union, and others who are active here in the Gambia, so that we know what they're doing. In fact, I'm meeting with several of them tomorrow in order to get some insights from them on the things that they're doing as we can start to move forward with ours. So we do it in a very collaborative approach. But what we have found consistently across the countries where we've worked is that there are needs where MCC's grant dollars, way we approach certain problems, allows us to have impact that other donor agencies just can't because of the way they're structured, because of their model, because of the way they're financed, those sorts of things. So anyway, that's kind of the approach that we take, and we found it to be successful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Small, who is the managing director of the U.S. government's Millennium Challenge Corporation, who is in the Gambia. Well, viewers, you're reminded that you're watching State of Affairs here on QTV. I'm your host, Aliou Cissé. We'll go with a short break, and when we return, discussion continues. Stay tuned.
Espas Motors is the largest and most modern auto service in the Gambia. Espas Motors is the only authorized dealer in Sharon, Mercedes-Benz trucks, Mercedes-Benz buses, Kia, Ford, Futon Mini and Midi buses, Futon trucks. At Espas Motors, we have qualified professionals who use modern technology to diagnose and repair all brands of motor vehicles. Espas Motors services include auto sales, auto repairs, vehicle painting, availability of high-quality spare parts, towing services. We are reachable at any time. Call Espas Motors on 352222 353 4444 or locate us on the Bertil Harding Highway. Espas Motors.
Hello viewers, welcome back from that short break. You're watching QTV. I'm your host, Aliou Cissé, and this is your weekly State of Affairs program. My guest this week is Mr. Justin Small, who is the managing director of the U.S. government's agency, that is the Millennium Challenge Corporation, who is in the country. Thank you so much once again for coming on the program. Before we went on the break, you talked about meeting other stakeholders. I mean, we really discussed that as to the actual reason why you are in the Gambia, before we get into the stakeholders that you are going to meet as far as this compact program is concerned.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think first is, as you know well, 6.5 years ago, there was a political transition in this country, and a commitment by the new government to democratic principles and the principles that underpin what MCC was created to do. And so we've been watching Gambia for some time. Of course, our board selected Gambia for a threshold program in 2017, and now selected for a compact program in 2022. So it shows both a recognition of the excellent progress that the country is making. Sure, there's a lot more to go. On both the the democratic side as well as the economic side and the social side, and so MCC is proud to be part of the U.S. government's engagement with the Gambia in focusing in particular on economic growth and poverty reduction.
And whilst you are in the country, I mean, who are you going to meet as far as this program is concerned?
Yeah, we've already had some excellent engagements within the government. The Minister of Finance has been a champion for the compact, and I know that the President Barrow, has also been a champion for the relationship with the U.S. government as well as for the MCC programs here. So we've been well received by the government, had meetings with a ministerial committee that represented many ministries that have committed to wanting to work with MCC on the future of this program. We also, as I said, talked with the private sector. We are, very much interested in what other donors are doing, but this is just an initial engagement. We will have a team of experts on our side that will come here in the near future, and they will spend more time here on the ground, engaging with a wide variety of stakeholders in the country, in the rural areas as well, so that we get a clear picture of the challenges across the country, as we then begin to narrow down to focus on what are the key constraints to growth that an MCC compact program can help address, thereby creating more growth and poverty reduction in the country.
And in terms of the Gambia, how soon do we expect to see the Gambia develop its own compact program?
So a compact relationship, I like to say, is a medium-term relationship. So it can be anywhere from 7 to 8 years from selection to when we finally finish the program. So we'll spend the next 2 to 3 years working closely together to design the compact. And we have a very rigorous approach. It's based in evidence that will help us define. So it's what we hear, what data tells us about where the challenges are and what the opportunities are, as well as political will. There has to be political will to make change in some of these sectors in order to see transformation. And that's what we're really after. So while it might seem to some like a long time, we feel like that we recognize the world is changing fast and we need to keep pace. And I've been impressed so far with what I've heard on my trip in terms of the level of commitment from the government of the Gambia to work closely with us, to provide the resources that are needed so we can go as quickly as possible.
Like I said in the intro, I mean, Gambia is not the only country that was selected. I mean, we've seen Senegal, Togo, Mauritania. But what is the difference between the Senegal's program and the Gambia? What is the difference?
Sure. So Senegal was actually selected for a regional compact. Okay. We have done 2 programs with Senegal. We had a first compact program that concluded a number of years ago, and we're currently implementing a second compact program in the energy sector in Senegal. But by selecting Senegal for a regional program, this is a new authority that Congress gave us a few years ago to really think about compact investments from what can get us greater regional integration, collaboration, and trade. And so we're going to be working with Senegal now on this sort of new program to really do that, to analyze what opportunities might be there for Senegal to be a more integrated regionally and collaborate with its neighbors and the sub-region. We just signed at the Africa Leaders Summit in Washington our first regional compact with Benin and Niger. Yeah. And this $502 million program is designed to help improve the road corridor from the port of Cotonou, which we have worked on in the first compact, all the way to Niamey, and helping really open up markets and access for goods and for the movement of people. So this is the first time we've done such a compact, and now we're looking for more opportunities across the continent in West Africa to expand that. So Senegal in Cote d'Ivoire is also a regional partner as well. So we've got lots, particularly here in West Africa, that we're exploring. So we'll see what the future brings, but it's an exciting new frontier for us.
I mean, I just want to know, have you at any point got any setback either from the Congress or the US citizens as far as allocating such funds to support Africa?
You know, the MCC has enjoyed bipartisan support ever since its creation in 2004. Both of the major political parties in the United States have expressed support for MCC's mission, for its model, and has providing consistently funding every year to support the selections that we make. So we feel very, very confident that we will continue to have the level of support from the U.S. Congress and certainly from the Biden-Harris administration to continue our important work and with the partners we select.
Like you said, I mean, you've supported several countries in Africa. I mean, someone out there might say, okay, you said talk about the scorecard that you look at to determine which country benefits. I mean, at what point does a country stand losing its benefit rights or its benefit status as far as the MCC is concerned?
Yes, as I mentioned, the MCC is a unique tool in the U.S. development toolkit. And it is a selective program. We don't work with every country. We have worked with about 24 different countries in Africa over our history. Sadly, there have been a number of country partners where we've had to suspend or terminate
and
the
you've invested like
program.
$9.5 billion in these countries. That's quite a lot of money,
yes.
right?
Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Almost $10 billion now. Yeah, it's a lot of money. Normally what we see is when countries abandon the principles that undergird MCC's approach, usually it has to do with democratic backsliding. So sadly, this last year, we had to terminate our program with Burkina Faso because of the coup d'etat that occurred there. So, we have a process whereas we analyze situations like that. It's not the kind of situation we ever want to see. Certainly we don't want to see that here in the Gambia. But that is part of our statute. Why we were established was to only work with the best governed partners. And when we see an erosion of a commitment to those principles, we have to take action.
And do you issue sort of a warning to a particular country before it gets out of hand, before they lose their beneficiary status? Do you, issue a warning to that country, or to say, hey, you know what, you are going on the wrong track, you might lose your benefits?
We have a process of what we call analyzing a pattern of actions. Okay. And so we do have a dialogue with countries before our board will take decisions like that. But we remind countries, and I've been doing that on this trip, okay, that if you don't remain committed to the principles that undergird the scorecard, you put the relationship with MCC at risk. So it's kind of built in to the relationship and to the program right from the very beginning.
Like in the case of the Gambia, is there any area, like you said, the threshold is still ongoing. Gambia just, transition from a dictatorship to democratic rule, 6 years ago. Is there any area where you think perhaps the Gambia should improve as far as the scorecard is concerned? Like you said, no country is perfect. All these countries, they have their loopholes here and there. But in the case of the Gambia, is there any area that you think perhaps, the country could improve as far as the scorecard that you used to determine?
Well, there is one area that the government has worked well in and will need to continue to work well in, and that's in countering trafficking in persons. And I know this is something that my colleagues from the U.S. Embassy follow very, very closely, and is an ongoing issue that countries across the world are required to address. We actually had to pause the Threshold program a couple of years ago due to a decline in the Gambia's ranking on the State Department's trafficking in persons list. So at this stage, the country has improved its ranking and is in good shape, but it is, I know, a continued risk, and I know that the U.S. Embassy has been engaging with interlocutors here very closely to make sure that those issues do not surface again. There's continued action to counter trafficking in persons issues.
So what is that you think the Gambia should do as far as the trafficking in persons is concerned? Like you said, it's something that the country hasn't been doing well. Going by the the previous reports issued by the U.S. government, like you said, the embassy here has also been engaging the government. On that issue, what exactly do you think the government should do? If you had to recommend or give suggestions to the government, what exactly should it do?
Yeah, you mentioned the annual reports that come out, the country reports. Yeah. They typically are very clear on the actions and steps that are needed in order for a country to continue to show progress on trafficking in persons. It's not my area of expertise. Yeah, exactly. My colleagues at the U.S. Embassy can provide more details on that if you wish. But I think it's very clear what needs to be done.
So do you also work in other parts of the world, or you just focus on Africa?
Personally, I have responsibility only for Africa.
Okay.
MCC is a global agency, okay, so we do work in other parts of the world, okay, in Asia, in parts of Eastern Europe, and we've worked in South America, Central America as well. So yes, we have a global mission. But again, we have selective criteria that guide who we work with.
Okay. And now that, like you said, the Gambia is selected for this package, what next?
So what's next is we are launching the development of the program. That's what's most important. Our first step is, as I mentioned, we want to have good, deep analysis on what are the biggest constraints to growth. We want to dig deep. What are the root causes, of that? Is it in transport? Is it high cost of transport? High cost of energy? Are there land tenure issues? Is there something about agriculture and getting goods to market? These are all kinds of things that we've analyzed in other countries that we want to look at. Is access to finance, is there a limitation there? And as we begin to look at that, then we'll sit down together with our partners and say, well, let's go deep. What's causing this? Is it a gap in infrastructure? Is it a policy concern? Is there a need for some kind of special financing that would be needed? These are the kinds of questions we will ask as we work together to identify the sector or sectors where we want to invest. Then we'll start thinking about projects. What project will actually create and intervene in that sector to change those dynamics, to allow us to relax that constraint to growth, is the term we like to use, so that we see the kind of growth unleashed that we know there's potential there. Obstacles are blocking it.
And you talk about trying to look down as to the key factors responsible for some of these problems. I mean, is this done independently by the MCC, or you engage the government, or you still work with Freedom House or UNESCO, as you put it, to get the facts on the ground?
For developing the compact program, we will work very closely with the government and a team that we've asked them to set up to work with us step by step. Because as I mentioned, we pride ourselves on country ownership. We want to make sure that the government is driving this process. They've worked hard, on behalf of the people of the Gambia to earn the eligibility, and we want them to lead and drive this process with our support. This is not an MCC staff program. Okay. This is a People of the Gambia program. And so that's where we're going to be putting our time and energy, is equipping our government partners with the tools they need to do and follow this process to develop the best compact program for the country.
And what have been your experience with other governments having them take the lead in such programs?
We've had great relationships with other countries and great success in doing this. It's really helped us think about the sustainability, because MCC's programs are limited to 5 years.
I was coming to that.
Yeah, 5 years.
Of it, yeah.
So at the end of the day, MCC won't be here to continue to implement the program. That is fully the responsibility of the government to sustain those investments that are made. Yes, we might have the opportunity for more partnerships in the future, but in terms of the investments that we're making, we want to make sure that those investments are still benefiting the people of the Gambia far after MCC has done its work here.
Because that's very important as far as Africa is concerned. Sustainability of some of these programs. So once they phase out, that's the end of it. But Gambia is just coming in new as far as this compact is concerned. They have benefited from the threshold. Yeah. But just once again, just to share with us your experience with other countries. I mean, perhaps whereby the threshold has phased out or the compact is there as well. What have you learned, the lesson learned as far as sustainability aspect is concerned? I mean,
we're still learning. We are still a very young agency, almost 20 years old.
That's no more young, 30 years.
20 years. I mean, there have been other agencies in the U.S. government have been around a lot longer than that. So we are very much pride ourselves on being a learning agency. And so we now have best practice guides on doing, investments in roads, investments in energy, things that we have learned where things maybe haven't gone as well. But I think to answer your question, when we have strong political commitment from the government, and we start to think about sustainability from when we begin, think about how this new infrastructure is going to be maintained. Where's the money going to come from? Adjusting tariffs, for example, can be a way, and doing it in an inclusive way so that the poor are not overburdened. There's different things that we've learned over time in working in sectors that can help set up those investments to be sustained and maintained for the government far beyond. We usually look at least a 20-year life after the program is finished for our calculations to make sure that there's an economic benefit for at least that long.
And I mean, in every agreement, I mean, this is more like an agreement between the MCC and governments, because there's billions of US dollars being spent on Africa with the intent that, you're going to, like you said, reduce poverty and enhance economic growth. I mean, they say in any game there must be rules. I mean, what are the key rules as far as this compact program is concerned between you and the governments? What are the key rules? Well,
I think
that govern the way you implement this program.
Right. I would say there are three things that govern how we implement the program. transparency, competitive procurements, and accountability.
Okay.
And so one of the things we will absolutely focus on is ensuring that every procurement that we put forward is publicly transparent. Because of our reputation, we get a lot of companies often who want to bid on those procurements. So what that means is we actually get competitive bids, lowers the cost, allows us to do more. So that's a big part, competitive procurement. And then accountability. I mean, we have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to hold ourselves accountable to the Congress and U.S. taxpayer who are funding us. Yeah. So it's important that monitoring, that evaluation process that I mentioned earlier, that we continue to do throughout the life of the program. Because again, at the end of the day, we are not satisfied unless we're delivering results for the people of the Gambia, because that's what we're set up to do.
And how long will the compact program last in the case of the Gambia?
So I think we're looking, like I mentioned earlier, about 7 years from where we are today to where we hope to be where we're closing the compact and maybe looking on to a future compact.
So meaning, the announcement of the selection of the country and then the implementation, there will be a grace period before you start the actual implementation.
So we will, the way this works is selection has already happened. We'll spend the next 2 to 3 years developing the compact, and then about a year or so preparing for implementation, and then 5 years to implement. And our statute says once we start that 5-year clock, we cannot extend it.
Okay.
So it's very important that we design the compacts well, so that the projects well, so that they will be implemented in 5 years. So it's possible that projects may be, proposed that would take 10 years to complete. Yeah. Unfortunately, that doesn't fit our timeline, so we can't look at that. So we have to narrow down based on our investment criteria, one of which is the 5-year timeline, to make key selections so that we can finish the projects in the time that we have.
And as we speak, can we say the funds are really available for this program?
So as I mentioned, now that the country has been selected, MCC will be working with our congressional funders to identify the funding over the next couple of years, so that we have the funding available when we sign the compact.
And what is the relationship? What is the role of the embassy in this whole program, in the implementation?
Well, the U.S. ambassador, of course, is the president's representative here in country, and has responsibility for all the work that is going on here with the U.S. government and the government of Gambia and the people of Gambia. So we coordinate very, very closely. And as I mentioned, Ambassador Cromer has been a champion already for our work and has really been instrumental in making sure that MCC is something that has sustained political commitment from the government.
We're running out of time. Final message before we wrap up this interview, if you have any.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I'm just honored to be here to launch this compact development program with MCC. We are really pleased with the commitment that we've seen. And I am just really excited to see what program we develop for the benefit of the people of the Gambia. So I hope maybe to come back someday in the future to talk more about it when we get a little further along.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sumal, for coming
to
the State of Affairs program. Quite appreciated. Well, viewers, with that, we bring an end to this week's edition of the State of Affairs program. Our guest this week was Mr. Justin Sumal, who is the Managing Director of the U.S. government's agency, that is the Millennium Challenge Corporation. He's responsible for Africa. And earlier on, you also heard from the Ambassador of the United States of America to the Gambia, Sharon L. Cromer. With that, we bring an end to this program. Thank you so much for watching. You can also watch the rebroadcast on Sunday at 10 a.m. But also, you can visit our YouTube channel where you can, of course, watch this program again. On behalf of the production team, I was your host, Alo Sise. Thank you so much, and goodbye.